Hi, so this is going to be a how-to on creating a scale model using proportions. So in order to make a scale model, we need to do some math. We need to set up a mathematical proportion where we turn the real whole thing into a model whole thing. So what we need to do is we need to decide how big we want our model to be. So we've done some calculations on the different layers of the Earth, and the biggest layer of the Earth is the thermosphere. And we want that to fit into a model that's going to be 12 inches in diameter. So I'm going to set this scaled layer for the thermosphere to be 12. That should automatically write it in to the nearest hundredth, the 2 decimal places. The rest of these we're going to have to calculate. So the thermosphere is our biggest layer, so that's going to be the whole. The rest of these are going to be the part. We're going to see how that's important in a second. So before I go do my math, I want to take a note of some of the pieces of information we're going to use. We're going to use the whole real thermosphere. That's the largest layer. We're going to use the whole model, which is going to be 12 inches. And we need to know the real part, which is 2,540 kilometers. So once we have those 3 pieces of information, we can go and do our proportion. All right, so how this works is we're going to fill in a little chart here. So the real whole, we said the real world, the whole, was 14,240 kilometers. The real model, the whole model is going to be 12 inches in diameter. So now what we have to do is we have to figure out, well, where does the part go? So the real part, which is the inner core, was 2,540 kilometers in diameter. So if you think about where this is going to go, it's going to go in the part under real. So I'm going to write that in, 2,540 kilometers. Now we want to know how big that part is going to be in our model. So that's where our variable x is going to go. So the way that we solve this is we treat it like a proportion. And in order to solve a proportion, we need to cross multiply. So we're going to set these 2 sides of the equation up so that we're going to take x times 14,240 kilometers. We're going to set that to be equal to 2,540 kilometers times 12. All right, so how do we figure out what x is equal to? We have to solve this for x before we put it into the computer. So in order to get x by itself, and I know that the math teachers tell us that we should do the math we know first, or that we can do. So normally you would take 2,540 and multiply it by 12, but I want you to hold off on that for a second. I want to focus on getting x by itself. So in order to get x by itself, we have to do order of our opposite operations. So we'll notice that we're multiplying. So the opposite operation of multiplication is division. So I'm going to divide. And in order to get the x by itself, I'm going to divide by the number that it's being multiplied by. So I'm going to divide this by 14,240 kilometers. So that is going to cancel out. So is the kilometers. That's actually going to be important. Now, if we do something on one side of the equal sign, we have to do the same thing on the other side of the equal sign. And so what ends up canceling out here is the kilometers. So those disappear. But then we have the rest of the numbers still there. Now, you're going to be able to put all that into a calculator. So that's what we want to be able to put into the spreadsheet. So now what I have is x by itself, because I canceled everything else out, is going to be equal to 2,540 kilometers times 12 divided by 14,240. This is what I'm going to put into the spreadsheet. So when I go back to my spreadsheet, I'm going to go to the cell for that particular part, the inner core. I'm going to put in an equal sign first in order to tell the computer that it's going to do some math. And I'm going to type that equation in that I just figured out, that calculation. So 2,540 times 12, and then use a slash for division, divided by 1,400 or 14,240. And then I hit enter, and that gives me my answer. You need to do that same calculation or similar calculation for each layer. So for the outer core, the only thing that's going to change in the math is that instead of using 2,540, we're going to use 7,040. So going back to my math, I can just think of it as erasing that one number in all the math and putting in a different number, 7,040. And there's my new math for the next cell. So going back to my spreadsheet, type in the equal sign. I'm going to choose the value from the choose the diameter for that layer, 7,040. I'm going to multiply it by 12 and divide by 14,240. And I'm done. So we need to do that for each of the parts of the model.